hours later, he knew that he had seen the last of it. Oh, it was there, beyond and below him, but here, up in these forests and among these crags, it would not find him. He wandered, taking in the sumptuous scene, clearing his lungs and his mind. He would only go back at night, slink through the streets under the cover of late twilight and hide in his cupboard. It's not that he thought the monster would notice him. It was far too preoccupied with what he couldn't imagine to take him into account. It was rather that he couldn't bear to see it, to admit its existence. What on earth had it to do with Salzburg? With artistic aspiration, with cultural heritage? What was it doing here? He was going to have to endure it for 6 weeks. He couldn't stand it. He would go to Dr. Hans Behring and tell him that his father had died and that he had to look after his mother, who was in a wheelchair. That was feasible enough. So the festival had to do without an English announcer for 1 season. My God, what about Frau von Tellen? What will she think? He couldn't do it. He didn't want to let her down. He had to. He couldn't possibly take 6 weeks of that thing. He would rather anything than that. He might as well be doing voice recordings in Battersea or the Bronx or downtown Cairo. He'd been walking for well over 4 hours now. As the blue of the sky, the luminescent, liquid, gentle blue of the canopy before him, not the crudely tattered, mildewy blue of the monster's idiot legs, shed its veil of the day and briefly mirrored the hues of the valley below it, David turned on his steps. He had to go back, but in the morning he would quit. The breeze carried an unfamiliar sound to him. He stopped. Unthinkingly, he paced towards it. There was no mistaking it. He moved faster. It couldn't be. But yes, it had to be. He was almost running now. Yes, he could see the source of the sound. He stepped with caution. He was within 50 yards of it. He stood astonished. A girl, maybe of 13 or 14, sat with her back to where he was on a small boulder. Dark brown hair in a single pigtail, cream shirt, blouse, a kilt-like skirt, white socks. She was entirely alone. He dared not move. A crack of a twig and she would turn, he was sure. And he didn't want her to turn, didn't want to see her face, didn't want her to see him, didn't want them to meet, wanted nothing but for her to go on, alone, as she was. She, who must have climbed to this point expressly to play, away from everything commonplace, in the midst of the extraordinary, and to her, perhaps, the sacrosanct. Whatever happened to him, wherever he went, however much of a mess he made of things, however many monsters he would encounter throughout the world, blighting everything before them and leaving nothing but deserts in their wake, he would remember this moment. The girl's earnest fingers, the exquisite sigh of the composer's voice, a twilight sky twixt valley and moon, the seemingly reverent stillness of the forest. He knew he had to move away before she stopped. She might sense his being there. He started back along his his way. He would go back and stay for the season. He would escape often to the forests. He would never see her again, or anyone else for that matter. If he spent the whole of his life looking and listening for it, he would never encounter it again. But when he was oppressed, suffocated, tortured by the omnipresence of other monsters and ghouls, he would reach into that one corner and hold the image before him. This would be his beacon, his reason. Let others talk of paradise. He possessed it.